Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my Soul Lane tier list for patch 10.4. So just to clear some things up, this is going to be purely for ranked, and an S tier means that they're highly likely to carry your ranked games, and D tier is highly unlikely to carry your ranked games, and you probably need to be the one that's getting carried, but they're still passable in this role. So obviously we're going to be skipping over a lot of gods. And of course, this isn't the highest level of play, but it's not like bronze tier either, so keep that in mind as well. So let's get into it. I think Achilles is like A, but he's like a weak A to me. People hype Achilles up a lot, but to be honest, I just don't really see it. I mean, he can't die in lane. That's nice, but his wave clear isn't that great. I mean, he's got decent harass. If you're greedy and you're like basically someone other than a warrior, he can poke you out pretty badly with his 3, but that's kind of all he brings in lane. And then late game, he's kind of only an execute. But to be honest, soul lane, other than the S tiers, is kind of terrible right now. So, you know, the bar is set pretty low. Like, there's the S tier, and then everyone else is just really low, in my opinion. So I think bringing bringing an execute to the table at least puts him in A, because, I mean, you got to deal with the execute, right? There's a lot of ways to deal with it, and you got to make sure you don't pick Achilles into the very easy ways. You know, it can be blocked, it can be healed, right? So you got to be careful about that, but at the same time, it's something they got to deal with. It's more threatening than what a lot of other warriors are bringing to the table right now, to be honest. Like, for instance, Amaterasu. With Golden Blade, she's actually not that bad. I don't think she's D tier. For me, like, D tier is, like, basically your team has to carry you or you're not winning that. Or, like, the enemy team's carrying you because they're not very good, basically. That's what D tier is. I don't think Ama's that. I mean, I think her late game is still okay. I actually think her mid game is better than her late game at this point because she just gets shredded late game. And basically the ultimate just takes too long to come out, and you're gonna either die or have to back off before the ultimate actually completes. So yeah, I think Ama's down there. But I mean, she can definitely still put in work sometimes though. So I think C is okay. Is Afro still? I wouldn't say Afro is really viable, but you do get an Afro at the end of the day. But there are better picks. How would you put her in D? Ares is like a C. I mean, he can get things going in certain matchups, but, you know, you got to pick him into that specific matchup. I wouldn't say he's anything great, and if you get behind, he is completely worthless. RTO, I feel like, is the same idea. Good into some matchups, but one of those ones where if you get behind, you're against one of those S tiers, you are getting behind, so it can be rough. And she really needs to get in there, get her hands dirty, but she just doesn't really deal that much damage. Plus, her healing's not all that great, and she can't really abuse Tablet anymore, but I do think she's still at least playable like a C. Baron is also like a C, I would say. He can definitely... The thing is, Baron can put in the work, but he can also get ganked a lot, so that's unfortunate. He can also get really far behind. And it's also like, he doesn't even have to die necessarily. He could just keep on getting forced out of lane over and over and over again, and the enemy soul laner just walks away with all the farm, basically. You can get proxied pretty hard as Baron as well, but he does bring a lot to the table when it comes to the late game, and the bruiser builds on Baron are still fine. I mean, they're not where they were, but I mean, they're still decent. Bastet is actually okay, and I'm really sad to say that because I hate this god with a burning passion. You think I don't like the Loki rework? Bastet's similar ethos, bro, but Bastet can definitely carry your ranked games for sure. She brings so much damage to the table, and she's extremely hard to kill in lane. If you're not too, like, if you don't try and force kills with Bastet, you can just sit there and farm all day and you'll get very, very strong and be a problem late game. Basically, her problem in the jungle is that she can't really bring a lot until she has a bunch of her items. What's the soul lane doing? Soul lane's not doing anything. We're just sitting in lane farming, and that's what Bastet's good at. So Bellona as well, I think it's definitely more of a ranked thing. This is a ranked tier list, by the way, boys. We're not talking about competitive here at all. Bellona, like, she can just run away with it if she gets one good rotation, is all it takes, really. She can really start running away with it. Into some of the S tiers, she really struggles. If I remember to point them out, I will. Herc comes to mind, for instance. But, yeah, she can really run away with it, potentially, but she could also potentially lose your team the game because she has some really bad matchups, and she can also just kind of sit there trying to farm and then just gets farmed herself because she's pretty easy to gank as well. Obviously, the ultimate is pretty predictable. She obviously doesn't bring a lot to the table late game, but let's be honest. Early to mid games, what's really important in ranked. So obviously, I'm not going to say she's S because of that. She's obviously still B for that, but. Chaac straight up A. I would say if I'm gonna I don't know if I'm going to order this, but I would say Chaac's definitely better than Achilles. Free laning phase, free wave pressure, basically, and the ultimate's really good. He just has a really good ultimate. It's so, like, basic. Oh, I skipped Cerberus, whoops. It's so basic and, like, free. It's free, basically. You're definitely going to hit that on a squishy, pretty much. But it can be a little rough sometimes, but not, you know, with, oh my god, what's it called? The wand, the green wand. I've forgotten what it's called 13 times now. Can someone help me? Basically, with that item, he's Count Slapula right now. He can Count Slapula you really hard. Basically, like a better Bellona right now. It's weird, right? Like, he's actually a lot more of like a basic attacker right now because of that item, whose name is gone out of my head. I also skipped Camazotz. Dude, you just get against some of these S tier soul laners, you're just not going to be able to play. You know what? Let's just take Afro off the list. I don't think she's good enough. Cabrakan, I wouldn't say is good enough. Gets destroyed by some of the top picks right now. Cerberus is a solid counter pick, I would say. Better than Bellona. Can bring, well, Bastet brings a lot in terms of damage, and her ultimate she brings a lot. But you know, I would say Cerberus is better than Bastet at least. But yeah, like I said in my guide on him a little while back, he can get killed very easily, so that's something you got to be careful about. But yeah, I mean, he still brings the anti-heal. He brings the anti-heal, sucks up all their healing, burns a lot of beads with his ultimate, and is just a general nuisance in terms of his damage. Because if you're a god who can't get him off of you, or you know, you're not near your support, basically, yeah. And he shreds protections, which is really good. Cthulhu's like he's a late game king, right? So for a lot of the game, you're kind of just sitting around, not doing anything. I do think his late game is completely undeniable. Like, he just becomes really good all of a sudden. Like, a Cthulhu will get farmed all game, and then he just rolls up to a team fight and just wins it for your team solo. It's like, oh, wait, how'd you do that? Teach me how to do that. I certainly can't play Cthulhu very well. Bro, I think this is going to be a very hot take. I think Cuchulainn's, like, not very good. Better than, like, these more niche picks. Better than Ama. But it's just, he's so win lane lose game, basically. Like, you can get so farmed on this god, and it just doesn't matter. And it's, maybe I'm just tilted from playing a bit of Chulainn this season, and it just never goes well. Because, yeah, it's rough in these streets. It's rough in these streets because you get so far ahead, and it doesn't matter because you get shredded straight through by both mages and hunters alike. You stop dealing as much damage because you're against auras and you have no proc shred of your own or anything. It's not like you can shred through with some of the potential basic attack items like Amaterasu, although he does have built-in anti-heal, and his laning phase is really good, so that's why he's there. Erlang's D, because I think he can be carried, and like he can do stuff if his team is doing stuff as well. He can't be the one who's bringing the sauce, right? You know, he's the guy. He's bringing the chips, basically. He's not making the sauce. What am I even talking about? Basically, you need to be carried by your team on this god, but he can still function in the solo lane. I've had some niche success in the solo lane with him because you can keep up in general. You can take a few trades here and there. Certainly not with Horus. I took a trade with Horus and I lost. Big surprise. Okay, Guan, our first S tier for sure. Like, you look up brain dead in the dictionary, you're not going to find it because it's not actually a word, but this is him right here. He just does ridiculous amounts of damage. The CDR spam is really just, it's not good, bro. It's not looking good. It is way too strong right now. And yeah, he just basically, at the very least, is neutral on every single matchup in the game. Even the ones where his Talu Assault gets stopped, it just doesn't matter anymore. Remember when that used to matter? When you can stop Guan's 3 and it actually mattered? It does not anymore. He shreds through any squishy, any backline. He's actually an example of a warrior right now who can actually deal damage late game, which is impressive. It takes him a long time to do it. Don't get me wrong. He doesn't burst people, but he can deal damage late game with that ultimate. And then, of course, into the Talu Assault, which does like 800 base damage because, you know, tanks are balanced. He's healing, he's spamming, you can't kill him. That's Guan Yu. Hades still, if I'm going to put Baron here, I need to say Hades still has minor relevance, I would say. I mean, you can still get whooped as a Hades if you're not respectful enough in your matchups. But if the enemy's a little too disrespectful, you can actually, like, maybe not solo kill people, but you can definitely, if you get some help from your jungler, you can stay even or even get ahead. And one good rotation, it's like a Bellona where it's like one good rotation, game's over. GG. Like, Hades can get so strong, but he does actually fall off a little late game because he starts getting shredded through, unfortunately. But I do think he's still solid enough to be on the list at least. I'm going to put Athena on here as like an honorable mention. I mean, I don't know. I would say she's good enough to be on here, but I do feel like you need to be carried a little bit. You do not need to be carried as a Hercules, who is definitely S tier right now, especially with the Golden Blade meta. I mean, he just has insane wave pressure because, like, bro, they put an attack speed stim on Hercules when Golden Blade was meta, and they didn't think that was... there could be a slight hole in that a little bit. So yeah, wave presence, insane, stops a lot of the characters right now with his driving strike, and is just a general nuisance to deal with. Very, very hard to deal with because of his damage on top of his tankiness. Yeah, I mean, he's still Herc. He still has the same tools that Herc has always had. It's just like, now you genuinely can't kill him, and he's genuinely one-shotting you. It's not just hyperbole type of thing. Super flexible as well. Basically no bad matchups, really. I mean, there's worse matchups than others, obviously, but no straight-up bad ones. He can kind of just run over the lane, and just, yeah, you can't out-trade him 1v1. So, yeah, he's up there. Horus is a similar idea. His level 1 through 3, well, not necessarily 1 through 3. His level 2 in particular is dumb. You just can't walk up to this god. Well, you could say level 3 as well. You just can't walk up to this god whatsoever because he's just gonna half hit you instantly, and he deals so much damage to you that it just doesn't matter that he doesn't have any wave clear or anything. And then of course Golden Blade in the meta, so eventually he'll get his wave clear. He'll be able to keep up with you in farm. He loses that sort of like half hitting potential, right? But he still deals respectable damage. He can get his team in and out of fights extremely easily. His entire team, literally. He can save teammates, he can save himself, like 5 ways from Sunday. I don't think that's actually how you say that, but you guys know what I'm saying. Very safe, a lot of damage, gets himself out of the early game, no problem. If anyone ever disrespects him in the early game, they're dying. Jormungandr, just because he was a soul laner, I'll include him, but I think that this god's just really bad. Really, really bad. He needs to be carried, basically. Not as bad as like Afro in the soul lane, because like there are situations where like in Afro solo lane, you can just not get anything going at all and just never do anything. But with Yorm, you can get some damage online. He's okay in the mid game, but he's basically just an ult bot late game, and his ult is not particularly good. Again, if your team carries you, you can get a good ult off late game. Yeah. I don't believe in that god. I really don't. Next up, King Arthur, and this is another one like Chulainn. I don't think he's top. He's not messing with the top tier, I don't think. I like him more than I like Achilles, but I don't like him as much as I like Chaac, because I still think his level, his level 2 is just that bad, in my opinion. I don't see people punishing his level 2 enough. His level 2 is so horrible, and you can get cringe ganked at level 2 all the time. I just don't see a lot of people doing it. And I have no good reason, because I played a lot of King Arthur. He's probably my favorite warrior, and it's just like he can't do anything at level 2. He needs Bluestone to be effective in lane at all, in my opinion. I mean, if you go Tainted Steel and stuff, good on you, but yeah, I feel like you need Bluestone to exact any sort of presence in lane. And if you're just farming for late game, there are warriors with better late games than him, but his is still solid. It's still good enough. He can still harass people, but his damage is really not all there, especially when it comes to fighting enemies with auras on them. And his CC isn't all there either. You kind of need teammates to follow up off of your stun for it to be effective, but at the same time, it's just like once he gets going, once he gets Clyde Shield, he can perform enough CC to be effective, essentially, because he's just a CC bot late game, really, other than when he gets his ultimate off. But again, hey, really potent mid game. You get a good rotation in the mid game. You can definitely destroy a team fight, and your team can use that momentum to help win the game. But you're not really solo winning it like a Guan can, like a Horus can, like a Herc can. So I don't think he's up there with the big boys. Mulan. I don't know where Mulan should go, really. I just don't see enough of her. She's like a Chulainn, where it's like win lane, lose game, because in a 1v1 it's actually still very difficult to deal with Mulan unless you're a top tier character. But then she just gets ganked extremely easily. Her late game isn't that great because her damage, obviously, like all the other warriors, falls off. Yeah, she just doesn't bring a lot to the table. I wouldn't say she's D tier, but I'll be hot take. I would take an Amma, well, I would take a good Amma player over a good Mulan player, basically, because at least the Amma will eventually come into their own. But there's just going to be, there can be times where Mulan can never come into their own because they got cringe ganked at level 2, right? Level 2 or 3 even. I mean, she needs to get her bow upgraded. Yeah, bow upgraded with the passive to ever survive a gank, right? So it's kind of rough, especially when assassins are still good. I think jungle's still good. So yeah, that's a problem for her. Who's next? Nike? Nike's a weird one because she just kind of works for no reason, it feels like. Because it feels like this god shouldn't work, right? It should feel like, alright, you're getting interrupted out of your one, you're getting sundered on your ult, you're doing nothing. But she works though, because her harass is just so... It's horrible playing against God. It's a travesty. She's disarming your entire backline. She's dealing decent damage. Her 1 actually deals decent damage. The knockup is actually great. Her 3 is a really good CC ability. And the 2 actually does come up sometimes, definitely. I think it's been underrated in this Hunter meta. The 2 does come up, for sure. It is definitely more of a niche thing, but yeah, I would say she's still good. She's like B, above Bastet, I would say. Yeah, I wouldn't say she's great, but like, she's got free wave clear, extremely tanky, hard to kill. Yeah, I would say she's still solid overall. Even though she's really not very favored. I mean, she just has a really bad reputation. A lot like Osiris. Osiris, he has utility with the ultimate, so I'll say he's like above. Yeah, like he's less. I would say, would I take a Mulan over an Osiris? Probably. I mean, people still disrespect the Osiris for sure, and like Osiris can definitely poke people out of lane if they disrespect him enough. But you know, that's not something that these guys aren't doing. The A and S tiers, he's not doing anything that these guys can't do if they're disrespected whatsoever. But at the same time, 1v1 is solid. The damage mitigation nerf has hurt him a decent amount, but at the end of the day, I would say he's still solid. He's still solid because he's got enough damage in 1v1. He doesn't get shredded through quite as hard as some of the other gods do, obviously, because of the mitts, and he has utility in his ultimate. So, on the whole, he has his uses, but it's not looking too great, you know, because he gets bullied out of lane, gets ganked very easily. Odin is just the definition of solid, because he can't die. He basically just needs a good cage in the mid to late game. That's kind of all Odin is just a cage at this point, because he's not dealing a lot of damage, right? He's not winning lane definitively. But I would say on the whole, the cage brings enough to the table for him to be B, and the fact that, you know, you can't really die on this god. And he's a big nuisance. He's a big nuisance like Nike, except, you know, I would take an Odin cage over a Nike ult. Sobek I actually think is underrated on the whole. I don't think the anti-heal comes up too often. I don't think that makes him OP or anything. But it is like, it's literally free anti-heal because like you can't miss Sobek 3. And his wave clear is actually decent. His wave presence is alright. He's hard to kill. I would say he brings... Because he's just Sobek, right? He's got the pluck, he's got the ultimate, so he has a decent amount of harass. He's got peel with his 2. Again, hard to kill, hard to gank. He can actually turn ganks on their heads. So he's... A lot of these gods in here are like hyper specific, right? Like you can only pick a Hades and a Baron into certain gods. You only want to pick Ares into certain matchups to shut them down. But Sobek is more of like a... He's generally good, but he's not really good enough to be any higher than what he is. Next up is Sun Wukong. I actually had a little bit of a streak playing Wukong. I don't think I've played him this patch yet, but I can tell you that that's definitely not enough to make him meta. Yeah, again, it's another one of those characters where his strengths do lie where it matters in ranked. That's the thing. Early mid matters in ranked a lot, and Wukong can do a lot in the early mid game. It's just he really struggles into top tier. That's the biggest issue with Wukong, because a lot of top tiers can completely deal with Wukong no problem. Like, they can 1v1 him all day, they can keep up with his lane presence all day, so it is tough. It's tough playing Wukong. On the whole, he does bring enough damage, but, you know, maybe a little further down. Maybe better than Bastet. He actually does things that Bastet does, maybe a little better, but he doesn't really bring the oomph that Bastet Ultimate does, at least in terms of CC. His CC is definitely the thing that holds him back the most, because obviously, warrior, damage, fall off. Yeah. And the Ultimate does deal a lot of damage, but if you go damage Wukong, you should hopefully get cringe ganked every 5 minutes. Susano, I think, is really solid, especially if we're talking about ranked. I mean, I think he's right up here. People disrespect him a lot. I mean, he's really bad. His level 2 is really bad. He needs level 3. But, yeah, I'd say he's better than King Arthur. It's just because he can hold on during the laning phase just fine, and if he gets disrespected, he can actually get a solo kill against some gods. Probably not S tiers, but people in his tier and lower, he can solo a lot of these gods. And people just don't expect that. They disrespect it and they get killed for it. And people try to... people try to camp Susano. Let me just put it out there as my own experience. People try and camp this god, and it just doesn't really work out because he is genuinely hard to kill. You just need to play it right. I think number one thing with Susano solo, you just got to play it right. Play it smart, you know? And yeah, obviously he kills people very, very easily. When it comes to squishies, he can annihilate them late game. His ultimate is an insane tool. I mean, it's just as good, if not better, than a lot of the warrior ultimates in the game in terms of what it brings CC and damage wise. You know, the pull, that's better than most warrior core kit abilities, right? On the whole, he brings a lot in terms of CC and damage. Obviously, he's not a secondary tank, but yeah, I don't think Loki's good enough. I don't think Terra's good enough. Terra's very good in support. I don't think she's really a soloing god though. I don't think Robin's good enough. Thor's good enough though. Thor, I would say, because he's so safe, right? He's the same idea as Susano, where it's like you deal so much damage in the mid to late game that it's like, oh, this is actually kind of worth it. This whole, you know, kind of sitting back and just farming, that is actually worth it to play the character. He can go more defensive or he can go full damage. It really depends on your preference. Susano, you really want to go full damage with, in my opinion, in the soul lane. But Thor, you can get more fancy with it. You can do on-hit items like Gladiator Shield, Phalanx, OP, right? Yeah, it helps out gods like Thor, who maybe need a little bit of help in the, you know, against lane bullies, essentially. Especially again, the S tiers. So, yeah, I would say Thor. I mean, I'll put a Thor above an Achilles ult all day. A lot more useful in the late game than Achilles, in my opinion. Bro, is Achilles just D tier? Like, he's not. I know he's not. I don't like playing that god. I just haven't felt useful on that god in some time. Tyr, on the other hand, recently got a buff. Is it good enough to put him into S tier? I would say Tyr's like the bottom of S tier bars. He's so unbelievably safe, a lot of wave presence, a lot of damage. He's one of the few warriors who can still deal a lot of damage. Notice a trend. These warriors are all very tanky and can deal a lot of damage, even in the late game. So Tyr can also bring the damage as well, especially if you go the Transcendence build. I would say that's still solid on Tyr for sure. And he's got more than enough safety for you to go that, in my opinion. Yeah, I think the god lacks a lot of good counters, and he's just a general huge nuisance. Early, mid, late. Really hard to deal with character. You have to deal with this character, and you can't because he just healed himself for, what, 350, and your ADC is only able to do 80 damage of basic attack to him. But I don't think he brings as much as like a Herc to it, or a Vamana, who I hope is next. Yeah, Vamana's next. Okay. So Vamana is also S tier. In ranked, he might be the best. I would say in ranked on the whole, this is probably the best soul laner in the game. Stompa. That's all I can say, really. He just stomps on people. You can definitely pick certain gods and pick certain compositions to deal with Vamana, but in general, you need to be on the same page with your teammates, and I don't know about you guys, that doesn't happen a lot in ranked. But you can shut him down, though, not in the early mid-game even, because like he's so safe in the laning phase, so long as Vamanas don't get carried away. I call him Vamana like over and over again when I can't really shut this guy down, but actually you can shut down a Vamana who's overzealous, really. Alquong's good into him. You know, a lot of you can go double hunter comps into him and just shred him. Like, there are ways to beat him, but on the whole, nobody's really doing what Vamana's doing. Like, all these gods are safe in lane. You can't really kill them. Hard to gank. All that same idea. But nobody quite brings the damage quite like Vamana does. And in my opinion, that's the number one thing you need in ranked, is just lots and lots of damage. Lots and lots of CC or lots and lots of damage. That's what Vamana brings. And obviously he's, you know, that's another one where it's like, okay, he's not really an early and mid-game god, but he's still decent. He's still a decent early mid. Is Xing Qian good enough? Probably not. Gilgamesh. Yeah, Gilga's good enough, I would say, to be put on here. In my opinion, he's like a better Chulainn, and I think he can do what Bellona does a little bit better, he just brings a lot of CC and damage to the table. It is like it's hard for him to live basically in the early game, but once he gets out of that bad early game, he can scale pretty well. He scales well enough, I would say. I wouldn't say the character is amazing or anything, but the ult is extremely disruptive. The kick is, again, extremely disruptive. It answers a lot of things in the game. Basically, if you're not against Vamana, Gilgamesh is pretty good. Vamana definitely shuts down everything Gilgamesh wants to do just because he's CC immune. Oh, and Guan, for that matter. He can also do that. But Gilgamesh can definitely single targets out for your team, and that's really nice. Like, a warrior who can properly do that is really nice. That's why Guan is all the way up here. Herc can sort of do that too. Tyr can definitely do that. So who's next? Lance, I wouldn't say is good enough. Shiva. Or Shiva. I actually don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah, his early mid is disgusting. He deals a really decent amount of damage, very easy to play, but man, that ultimate is bad. That ultimate is really bad. But you know, it's not like it's a bust every single time you use it, right? It's just a lot of the times you use it, it's not very good. So he's a lot like Hades in that regard, where it's like early mid, it's like this character's not too bad. And if you get a good rotation early as Shiva or Hades, oh, pretty good. But then you hit the late game, you start getting, well, in Hades' case you get shredded, as in Shiva's case you just sit there and watch the team fight fly away from you because you're just stuck in your ultimate. Alright, so Surtr. I thought this was the worst god in the game for a little while, because he doesn't really bring too much to the table, but he does have the item, which I've looked it up now, Vital Amplifier. Because he has Vital Amplifier, I think that keeps him out of D tier, but in my opinion, this character really just doesn't bring anything to the table. You know, I would say he's better than a lot of these niche gods, where it's like, you know, you can get ahead, and if you don't get punished, or if you're in a certain matchup, you can do work, and I think he's like just below Chulainn for that. I can't really see Surtr running a game. Like, the thing is, Amma gets to late game, she's pretty potent. Mulan early mid can keep that side of the map pressured, right? Wukong, same idea. Nike, same idea. I feel like Surtr can't assert in that way, no pun intended. A lot of this has to do with the ultimate and just the fact that he only has the stun. A lot of it is also just relying on the Vital Amplifier, and it's a bit of a greedy build. I do think it's a bit of a greedy build, although it is absolutely necessary on gods like Chaac, Surtr, Bellona. Those are gods you need to buy Vital Amplifier. So on the whole, I really don't have a whole lot of love for Surtr. I just don't feel like he's going to be able to counter enough stuff. Like some of the gods up here are straight up counters, gods in the same tier are straight up counters, and he also doesn't carry too hard, but at the same time, the stun's very easy to hit, and he can do a lot of damage with his basic attacks, and the ultimate for how slow it is, which can be a real problem, a lot like Shiva back here. It can still, if you land a good Surtr ultimate, it's a good Surtr ultimate, so I think he's C. Let me reorder this real quick. Alright, so this looks pretty good to me. I know there's going to be a little bit of spots of contention, but also keep in mind that this is for ranked, and it's like, the tiers mean just as much of like how effective the character is, as much as it is just how high potential does this character have to carry a ranked game, essentially. And so that's why it's a little bottom heavy, is just because a lot of the warriors just are not capable of doing that, just not capable of carrying anything other than like early mid. Late game, most of them do fall off, so that's why a lot of them are just down there, because they have potency or potential in the early mid, and then they just fall off, or some of these down here just have no potential at all and need to be carried, essentially. So yeah, I think that is my tier list here. How do you guys like the format? What would you guys change about this tier list? Probably a lot. Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.